What's up YouTube? It's your boy Expensive Cardboard here, back here again with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you my post Legacy of Destruction Salamangreat deck profile. Without further ado, let's get started. So first up we are running 3 copies of our boy Salamangreat Gazelle, as well as 3 copies of Salamangreat Spinny. So these two are probably the most important cards you want to see in your opening hand. So Gazelle is a walking Foolish Burial and it can special summon itself for free, while Spinny is a 1-card combo for Sunlight Wolf. And it can also help extend your plays, which is very important. Next up, we are running not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of Lady Debug. That's right guys, Lady Debug is back. This card is a generic Cyber Searcher for your Cyber's archetype. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 level 3 or lower Cyber's monster from your deck to your hand. So it is a searcher for your Salamangreat monsters, which is very good if you want to get access to your Gazelle, your Spinny, your Weasel, what have you. Next up, we are running 2 copies of Jack Jaguar. In most builds, you'll see 1 copy of Jack Jaguar, but for mine, I like to run 2 because Jack Jaguar is a massive money saver for this deck. If you don't want to spend another $30, another $30, $60 on Raging Phoenix, with Jack Jaguar, you only need 2 copies in your extra deck. Because not only do you get an extra body on the board, but you get to recycle the Raging Phoenix back in your extra deck, theoretically giving you infinite copies of Raging Phoenix. Next up, we are running a single copy of Salamangreat Fire. I set this card down to 1 because I feel like with Fire, he fire locks you when you activate his effect. I mean, it's a good card and all, but in this version of the Salamangreat build, you don't always want to be fire locked, especially if you want to get access to your Access Code Talker or your Underworld Goddess play. Next up, we are running a single copy of Salamangreat Weasel. This card is absolutely crucial in this deck. It's one of the new support cards. If you have 2 or more Salamangreat monsters in your grave, you can special summon this card. And while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon a Salamangreat monster from your graveyard to your opponent's field. And if you do, you get to draw 1 card. So what this does is that it triggers your Promethean Princess from your graveyard, which is incredible, and you get an extra draw. Next, you have a single copy of Salamangreat Foxy. I think 1 copy is perfectly fine. I used to run 2, but I think 1 is perfectly fine, especially with a lot of the floodgates are kind of limited this format. Skill drain can still be an issue sometimes, so that's why I'm running at least 1 copy of Foxy to deal with the skill drain. Next up, we are running a single copy of Falco. Falco is nice because when he's sent to the grave, you get to recycle a Salamangreat spell or trap from your graveyard back to your field face down. And then we have a single copy of Mirror. Mirror is nice because he's an extra extender. And then finally, after we waited for a long time for Legacy of Destruction to be released for the TCG, we finally have Code of Soul. This is the newest support card for Salamangreat. If you control a Link monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. During a main phase, you can activate this effect once this turn. If you Link summon a Salamangreat Link monster, you can use 1 Salamangreat Link monster you control with the same name as the entire material. During your opponent's main phase, you can banish this card from your grave. Immediately after this effect resolves, Link summon 1 Link 3 or higher Cyber's Link monster. So what's really cool about this card is not only is it an extender, it allows you to reincarnate a second time, and while it's in the graveyard, you get to Link summon during your opponent's turn. So that's it for the monsters. Let's get into the hand traps. So for the hand traps, we're running 3 copies of Ash Blossom. We are running 3 copies of Effect Veiler. And finally, we're running 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. I think Infinite Impermanence and Valor and Ash. I think this is the bare minimum hand traps that people need to run in today's meta. I can see why people are running 12 to 15 hand traps, but in my opinion, if you don't have the space for it, then I think 9 hand traps is perfectly fine. I think these hand traps are perfectly decent choices for the meta. So I think so long as you have these hand traps, you'll be fine. And now let's get into the spells and traps. So first off, we are running a field spell, which allows us to reincarnate our Salamangreat Link monsters. Next, we are running 3 copies of Salamangreat Circle. Not only is this card a searcher, but it also has another effect where you can target a reincarnated Salamangreat Link monster in your field, and if you do, it becomes unaffected by monster effects for the rest of the turn. Next up, we are running 3 copies of Signet Mining. So because we have Code of Soul in the deck, it's not a Salamangreat monster per se because it doesn't have the word Salamangreat in its name. I feel like having a good amount of generic cyber searchers is important because this is one of the cards that can search out your Code of Soul, and your Lady Debug can do that as well. In addition, we're also running 2 copies of Will of the Salamangreat. This card is absolutely busted. It is a soul charge for Salamangreat, and it does not prevent you from conducting your battle phase. Next, we are running 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. So if you're not running Triple Tactics Talent, you could run 3 copies of Ghost Mourner instead. But the reason why I like Talent so much is because it's one of the ways we can out Nibiru, or at least we can flush Nibiru out, which is pretty awesome. And it also has other effects if we need it, just in case. So it can also be a Change of Heart if we need it, or it can also be a Pot of Greed if we need to dig deeper to our deck. So basically, I think this is a little more versatile than Ghost Mourner, in my opinion. Next, we are running a single copy of Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave is imperative because especially in this format where hand traps are everywhere, you're going to see Ash Blossoms, you're going to see Veilers, you're going to see D-Barrier, not D-Barrier. There's a D-Shifter, that's what I meant, D-Shifter. So you're going to see hand traps in every matchup you're going to play. So Call by is just one of those cards that's going to be help you get that hand trap protection. And then the only trap cards in the deck are Roar and Rage. These are the only 2 trap cards that you need in your main deck. So you don't really need any more traps than that. Next up, for the extra deck, we are running 2 copies of Balinx, as well as a single copy of Almirage. So these are essentially your forerunners in your extra deck. Balinx will search out the field spell. It can also protect your solid cards from being destroyed by card effects. And Almirage is that Salamangreat that could turn your hand traps into a Salamangreat monster in case you open up with nothing but hand traps, which can kind of suck. So Almirage is there for extra insurance if you need it. Next up, we are running 2 copies of Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. This card is an absolute must-have. While it's on the field and a solid monster is summoned next to a zone this card is pointing to, you get to recycle a Salamangreat monster from your graveyard to your hand. And if this card is reincarnated, you also get to recycle a Salamangreat spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty good. Next up, we have one of the most important cards in this deck, Promethean Princess Bestower of Flames. You cannot special summon monsters like fire monsters while she's on the field. You use each of the following effects of Promethean Princess once per turn. During your main phase, you can special 1 fire monster from your grave. If a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field while this card is in your grave, you can target 1 fire monster you control and 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy them. If you do, special summon this card. Next up, we have 2 copies of Salamangreat Raging Phoenix. This card is a definite must-have. If this card is reincarnated, you get to add a Salamangreat spell or trap, or actually just any Salamangreat card from your deck to your hand. It could be Roar, it could be Rage, it could be Will, it could be Weasel, it could be basically any Salamangreat card, which is absolutely insane. And on top of that, if you have a second copy of Raging Phoenix in your graveyard, and you have a solid monster that was destroyed by a card effect, Raging Phoenix can summon itself back from the graveyard and gain attack points equal to that monster's original attack, which is pretty awesome. We are also running 2 copies of Pyro Phoenix. Since we have Code of Soul now, Pyro Phoenix becomes a lot better. So while he's on the field, his first effect is you can inflict burn damage to your opponent equal to the attack points of the linked monster your opponent just summoned. And if this guy is reincarnated, he can destroy all cards on the field. So with that effect, be able to do that on your opponent's turn with Code of Soul is actually pretty insane. Because now we have more than one ways to disrupt our opponent. Next up, we still have our access code package. We have update jammer, we have transcode, we have access code. I still like this package a lot because just in case if the Raging Phoenix OTK fails, we have a backup OTK as well. So before we had the new support, this used to be our only means of OTKing, but now we have Raging Phoenix. This is a backup for that. That way we still have a way to go for game. And then we have our Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, simply because I like this card a little better than SP Little Knight. It's a little less expensive, and it can be very useful in terms of when your opponent has a towers on the board and you need to get rid of it. This is a card that's going to help you get rid of those towers. And then finally, the only Xyz monster in our extra deck, Salamangreat Mirage Stalio. You only need 1 copy because he can constantly be recycled to your extra deck due to Jack Jaguar. And it's just imperative to have 1. Let's get into our side deck. So we're running 2 copies of Nibiru, as well as 2 copies of Dogoran Mad Flame Kaiju. So Nibiru is essential this format because you're going to be breaking boards with this card. And Dogoran is just useful for the fact you can get rid of towers, which is pretty nice. And then you have 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, as well as 2 copies of Ghost Bell. So Ghost Ogre was added to the side deck because this is currently the Tenpai Dragon format. Tenpai Dragon is going to be everywhere, so this is a card that's going to be very useful against Tenpai Dragon, so it'll help get rid of their field spell. And Ghost Bell is just good this format in general because a lot of effects are going to be happening in the graveyard, so you can use this card to prevent your opponent from interacting with their graveyard. You essentially just cut them off from that resource. Next, we're running 2 copies of Raigeki, as well as 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Board breakers. Having extra board breakers in your deck does not hurt at all. Then we're having 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Cosmic Cyclone is very good, especially against the Artifacts matchup when you're going up against Artifact Scythe or Artifact Lancia. Those effects get triggered if they're sent to the graveyard by destruction. Cosmic Cyclone, however, will remove those cards from play, which is very, very useful. And finally, we're running 2 copies of Salamangreat Heat Leo, because it wouldn't be a Salamangreat deck profile without Heat Leo. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and you have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.